Thank you all for attending this remotely. I really appreciate it. So as Sasha said, what we're trying to do here is to continue the activities of the Jordan Center while no one can meet in person. And so we're doing this on, and I volunteered to do this because of this project that I'm working on. I'm calling this lecture series the short course for obvious reasons, a play on words, but also because I want to make clear as I start out, this is a very half-baked research project. This is something that I'm hoping to get input from all of you on because I'm still very much deep in the research stage of something that I have to write fairly quickly. By the end of the calendar year, I'm supposed to turn in a 40,000 word manuscript for the Russian short series that is going to be called, oh, it's not letting me, well, there, Meanwhile in Russia, Russian internet memes and viral videos should come out in 2022. So I'm researching while writing, which may very well be a bad idea. And then presenting all of this when I am, there's so much I still don't know, might also be a bad idea. So why do this? One, of course, to show the Jordan Center is still here. I find it personally helpful to know that there's still some sense of a scholarly community around us, even as we're all more or less in quarantine. I also recognize that a huge portion of people in our field are simply scrambling from moment to moment, managing enormous classes on a variety of technical platforms, and then dealing with childcare and all these issues, and don't have much time for anything else. But also there's a portion of us, particularly I'd say probably senior people, who do have it easier, and I'm one of those. We have smaller, fewer classes. I do a lot of admin. I just have one class this semester, no tenure pressures. No one really cares when my research comes out. It just does not matter. And people in my cohort tend to have children who are older, so it's simpler, though in my case, a little bit more complicated. So that while there's a lot of people in our field who are just crazed and frantic, there's still a portion of us who are also kind of profoundly bored. And so I wanted to try to use my own boredom to address both communities. And maybe if you're frantic, you might want a break now and then that is vaguely related to your field and is not just Netflix. So I'm keeping myself entertained. I'm hoping to keep some of you entertained. And I want to stress that this is not a polished set of conclusions, something that's very tentative and that could really be helped by crowdsourcing. So this is a lecture series, but it's also a cry for help. If you have criticisms, thoughts, suggestions for me as I'm working on this project based on listening to some of these lectures, that would be really helpful. Because what I'm doing now is sort of like what I've done in the past, where I am writing the rough draft of a book and I blog it, as I did with Plots Against Russia and with the first volume of Russia's Alien Nations. But this is not, what I'm presenting right now is not the first draft of the book. It's something even less good than that. Also, when I present a scholarly talk, it's usually scripted within an inch of its life. But this is more like when I lecture in class and I have notes, but really not full sentences and all of that. It's more like I imagine a poster session to be, but I've never been to a poster session, so it's really just my imagination. One more caveat, I also want to share why I'm not the right person to be doing this project that I'm doing and presenting on. I am not a native speaker of Russian. I live on the internet, but more on the English language internet than on the Russian internet. And by internet standards, I'm very old because of how the internet's kind of like dog years. I'm not a digital native. I can just aspire for near native proficiency. But I do have a long history with memes and meme theory. By the way, I also want to stress that even though the title is Russian internet memes, what I'm really talking about is memes and viral video. It's just when you say them together, and it's less catchy, and as you'll see, that would make it a less successful meme. The original idea was to do one long lecture and live stream it and then upload it, but then I realized, why should we stick to that format when we're not in the space where we usually have the 40-minute lecture? To be stuck that way, it's kind of like in the early days of film when you would just film every scene in order of the script, even if it made no sense in terms of what your workload is, or for people might remember back when people would print out email. There's really no reason to be stuck to an old format. Plus, my material is about micro units of culture, so let's go bite. These lectures are supposed to be around 15 minutes. And if you download them and play them on QuickTime or AVC, you can even watch them on double speed or triple speed and get done with them even quicker. And as the advertisements stated, there's no knowledge of Russian required for all this. don't know how many of these webisodes we're going to be doing, but I do know some of the things that I think I'd like to cover. So very tentatively, this is a list of possible topics. Some of them are just memes that I want to discuss. Some of them are topics. So that what it's worth, but I'm not wedded to this by any means. And we'll be doing this every Friday, COVID willing. So for at least 5 or 6 weeks, and see how that goes, assuming people are still interested. So that was the preamble, the much too lengthy preamble. Let's talk about memes. So I've called this lecture Getting Memes Wrong, because the great thing about how people now know about internet memes is it also means that people, when they talk about memes, they're not actually talking about what memes were originally defined to be. That is, the way that people use the word meme is kind of incorrect technically, but also in a way, as we'll see, possibly demonstrates the validity of meme theory. That is, people getting it wrong in their own way is an example of how memes work. But I hope that'll make more sense in a few minutes. So, was first proposed by Richard Dawkins. Here he is on South Park when he's about to have his date with Mrs. Garrison. Richard Dawkins, who's now probably best known for his atheist Islamophobic crusading, but he wrote a book in 1976, I believe, called The Selfish Gene, where he tried to reinterpret what evolution is and what Darwinism is. He actually proposed something called universal Darwinism. The idea behind the selfish gene is that evolution is really about what is in the interest of the gene, not in the interest of the organism that, in a sense, hosts the gene. And it's competition among genes for replication and for surviving in the next generation of organism. All that is fine. You can agree with it or not. It doesn't really matter. But in the last chapter, he makes a step forward where he suggests if we do want to believe in something called universal Darwinism, and for him, universal Darwinism means that in any system where you have replication, and the replication might be imperfect, you could have imperfect copies, and scarce resources, you're going to have something that looks like evolution in the biological world. So he was proposing a way in which evolution could work in culture. Now, there's a long and awful history of applying culture, but he was trying to do something that he hoped would be completely different, in that he was not arguing that culture is all based on biological evolution. He is positing only one biological instruction encoded in our, and that is the instruction to imitate. He's postulating that humans from babyhood on naturally imitate what they hear, what they see, people around them. This is one of those things which may or may not be true, but I think empirically can make a lot of sense, because we can think of how that works in our lives. And so with that one drive, he postulates that culture is replicated kind of the way genes are, that there's a basic unit of culture or basic unit of information analogous to that he called the meme. That is a sort of a unit of imitation. These are bits of cultural information that, as he puts it, get reproduced by getting transferred from brain to brain. That is, if you think of a real meme, a successful meme is catchy because you just can't stop thinking of it. He always gives the opening notes of Beethoven's Fifth. You can think of any earworm song that you can't get rid of, slogans and so on and so forth, catchphrases. Those are catchy and they reproduce by, you hear them, they're stuck in your head, you say them yourself, and therefore you are the vehicle for the replication of these genes as you repeat the meme that you just heard. As you repeat the song, you repeat the notes or whatever it is that you actually end up repeating. So the memes are the replicators and we are the vehicles, or we are some of the vehicles for transmitting memes. Other vehicles could be books or movies or videos, really anything that has a collection of information that can then be spread. And if it's successful, people repeat it. If it's not successful, people forget it. So it's survival by being catchy. An example of how catchiness is important is that around the same time that Dawkins proposes the meme, another scientist proposes a very similar idea, but instead of calling it the meme, he calls it the culture gen. Now, the culture gen, I think we can agree, is an ugly, awkward word, did not catch on. Meme is catchy, it caught on. So the meme was successful, whereas the culture gen meme was not. The culture gen meme is only successful to the extent that someone like me, who's interested in the background here, might repeat it. But chances are the rest of you aren't going to go around talking about culture gens after all of this, though you might talk about memes. He then postulates that a whole bunch of memes can work together and become what he calls a memeplex. This is where it gets even vaguer, like a religion can be a memeplex and so on and so forth. As I think I'm making this clear by being unclear, it's all kind of vague, and there's a lot of skepticism about this among various scientific communities. And I'll get to that in a second. I do want to stress how, in addition to catchiness, there's another strategy by which a meme can be replicated, and that is having the force of cultural institutions, of governments, of schools, making you learn these memes. So for instance, in the United States, just about everybody who's grown up here knows the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, the Pledge of Allegiance, as you can see, is one of the most unwieldy, ugly sentences in the English language. This is not about the politics of the Pledge of Allegiance. It's just about how it's put together. The Congress kept adding more and more phrases. Look at this diagram of it. It's insane. On its own, this is not a sentence that would reproduce itself. But if you went to a certain type of American elementary school, you learned it and you were able to say it in sort of a choral repetition. And thanks to the institution of American patriotism in American schools, you know this. So catchiness is not the only way for memes to survive. Now, memes evolve, according to Dawkins, the way that genes evolve, in that they're replicated imperfectly. That is, the fact that sometimes a meme you get a meme wrong leads to the production of a new meme that might be even more successful. This is something many of us encounter when we think of a very popular, amusing phenomenon, such as misheard song lyrics. So for instance, Pat Benatar never sang "Hit Me with Your Pet Shark," but lots of people heard that. Elton John never sang Hold Me Closer, Tony Danza." The Beatles in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds did not sing "The Girl with Colitis Goes By." But once you hear them, it's hard to unhear them. And of course, Jimi Hendrix did not say "Excuse me while I kiss this guy." Now, the point is, these are misheard phrases that now have a life of their own. You can see their images, they're catchy because they're funny, and they wouldn't exist if people didn't mishear them. So it is mistakes, errors in copying, or randomness in copying that allows memes to replicate. All right, so there are lots of problems with all this, and I promised I'm going to get to Russian internet memes at the end, I promise, but this is the background. This is the most boring part of everything I'm doing, I'm sorry. There are lots of problems though with this notion of memes. One is a lot of people are wedded to a metaphor of the virus for memes, and we're all very sensitive to viral metaphors right now. My problem with the virus metaphor is it seems to suggest that there's a kind of, we all have some kind of unitary, coherent self that is not made of memes, and then memes are this sort of hostile thing taking us over. Whereas actually, if you buy meme theory, every piece of information in your head is a meme. So whether it reproduces a called viral or not is kind of irrelevant. There's also the problem that I alluded to before of social Darwinism. There's that very bad history of appropriating Darwinian thought in order to prop up racist assumptions. And that is an extremely valid critique of any attempt, I think, to apply Darwin. But I do believe that to the extent that it's possible, meme theory can avoid this. There's also the way in which this notion of competition among memes for the scarce resources of our attention and brains seems like it's just kind of replicating capitalism and assuming capitalism is natural. This is a critique Andrew Ross makes in his book, The Chicago Gangster Theory of Life. Then, of course, a big problem is how you define a meme. If a meme is the smallest unit of culture, what exactly is it? Is the entire song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds a meme? Is the girl with now I can't even say it, not colitis, the girl with kaleidoscope eyes, is that the meme? There's not a very rational way of dividing this up. Supporters of meme theory say that gene theory was developed before or evolution was developed before the gene was isolated, so it doesn't matter. Connected to all this is the meme real, or is this just a metaphor? That is, if we can't find any evidence for it, is this just some interesting construct we have to talk about culture that doesn't have any external validity? And finally, does it even leave room for human agency and human consciousness, or are we all just supposed to be a collection of memes? Because some of the most extreme meme theorists, such as Susan Blackmore, use theory to argue that we have no selves. So memetics was slow. Memetics is the science of memes, was slow to take off in the scholarly community. There are a couple very prominent people who have pushed memetics in the public. is Daniel C. big popular theory. Another is Douglas Hofstadter, best known for his huge tome Gödel Escher Bach. But really, it started to take off more, and I think this could be seen as a possible critique. It really took off more in science fiction and comic books than anywhere else because it was so useful for that. And I have to say, I first learned about memes from science fiction and comic books, which is where I learned almost everything valuable that I know. So there you go. Which leads to a question as I'm talking about memes. Do I believe in memes? Do I believe memetics is real? Well, I believe in memes kind of the same way I believe in Freud. It's good to think with, but I don't necessarily want to go into analysis. I don't need Freud to be real, and I don't need memes to be real. I need them to have a heuristic value that it can help me explain things. These are things that I can think with, and that once I've thought with them, I can't unsee them anymore. Personally, I feel that the value of a theory is not ultimately its truth value, but the way in which it can act on the mind of the critic and trick the critic into being able to see things that they might not notice otherwise. That to me is the object of a theory, the way it trains your own consciousness. It's sort of like Sorokin's stories in which literature is a drug and people basically are mainlining a Russian novel to get high from it. So in a sense, in these short lectures, I'm trying to microdose you with meme theory and see how well it works. Anyway, so memes are pretty obscure when people first started talking about them. And I've been looking into memes in a semi-scholarly way for the past 20 years, roughly. And when I first gave a talk about memes in Russian postmodernism at Columbia University almost 20 years ago, no one had heard of memes. And most of the questions were, is this a meme? Is that a meme? Is this a meme? It was amazing how completely new this was to people I was talking with, even though it wasn't new to everybody else. But something big happens in terms of people's consciousness of memes, and in terms of they're getting memes wrong, technically, and that is the rise of the internet meme. Now, the internet meme was first identified by Mike Godwin in an article in Wired magazine in 1993, but like many things, it took a long time for that really to spread and take off. So the internet meme then is what we think of when we think of an internet meme. I'll get to that, right? But these are things that are confected, put together as perhaps sounds and images together, or words and images that are spread on the internet, that are reproduced because people find them interesting or funny or obnoxious or something, and that's how we know about memes. Internet memes are a subset of memes. Memes in general are things that happen. Internet memes are deliberate. Someone at some point had to at least identify something as good to spread and start spreading it. It took years for this to reach the public consciousness, in part because the internet wasn't in such wide use, and also because of where some of the earliest internet memes first arose. Because this is where memetics is kind of like a virus, because you can think of the internet having an ecosystem with places like 4chan, which are the kind of the equivalent of some mysterious cave where bats incubate the Ebola virus, like someplace most of us don't want to visit, but is generating these memes that are going to spread out to the wider internet. So some of the earliest well-known internet memes, I think many of you will know them. There's lolcats, right? There's Doge, this dog, and you can see the dog's thoughts again and again while you see this picture. There's all your base belongs to us. All of this gets easier to do and easier to spread because of the rise of image macros. Image macros basically give you a picture like this one and make it easy to throw words on it, and then make it something to share. So eventually we get more recent, very popular image macros that generate more and more possible memes, such as distracted boyfriend. I think a lot of you have seen distracted boyfriend. This is my favorite version of distracted boyfriend, by the way, for a much, I think, of meme fans. It takes less and less technical skill to make them, though for them to be good, it still takes, I think, a fair amount of cleverness. And internet memes are really a big part of the language of young people today. Memes now are a hobby or an activity that can be listed on someone's Facebook profile. I really like memes, right? And they mean internet memes. They don't mean Beethoven's Fifth. There are also very popular meme groups. And in fact, there's a set of meme groups that I like because they all are a variation on the same type of name, which means that it's there's a meme of meme groups that keeps reproducing itself. So there's, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't give you I forgot about this, the most interesting man in the world. If we go to meme groups, there's dank memes for edgy teens on Facebook. And so this memes for teens thing becomes its own meme to create more groups for people to share. Then there's spicy, edgy teens, new urbanist memes for transit-oriented teens, and quite recently, you might have seen in the New York Times, Zoom memes for self-quarantines. Now, there's no reason why memes should be for teens, except, possibly if you think in terms of age groups, but really that doesn't even work. It's just catchy. And so I suspect we'll see more and more meme teen groups out there. And this all fits into one very common, easy definition of what an internet meme is, which is it's kind of a nationwide in-joke, or an in-joke that is for whoever the community is that is consuming these memes. Memes create a community of understanding, or are created by a community of understanding. For those of you out there who are familiar with literary theory, it's kind of like Stanley Fish talking about interpretive communities in text, that is, interpretive communities of people who understand text in a certain way. Only here, the communities come first, and then they create the text they're talking about. In this case, it's the memes. Now, the way in which memes are enjoyed and shared, and internet memes are enjoyed and shared, a lot of it predates the internet and predates the wide use of the internet. So for my generation, I am one of the oldest Gen Xers out there, for instance. My generation of Americans did, as children, we did not communicate through internet memes. That was not a thing, but we communicated through references to commercials that everybody knew. So for instance, just about everybody who grew up in America my age knows "My husband, some hotshot. Here's his ancient Chinese secret, Calgon." This whole, if you don't know this, take my word for it. It was a big thing that everybody referred to because it was such a stupid commercial where this woman comes up and says, "Ancient Chinese secret, huh?" Or there was a series of commercials for coffee presented by an actress, Rula Lenska, and she started saying, "I'm Rula Lenska." And the problem was, it was for America. She was an actress in England. No one in America had ever heard of Rula Lenska. So these commercials became extremely popular as fodder for jokes, because the whole joke was, who the hell is Rula Lenska? And this is the sort of thing that you would have nowadays as an internet meme. Also from that era, the spot maker, "Oh No Calgonite," and dishwashing liquid, "You're soaking in it." If you don't know these, it's fine. If you do know these, I'm imagining you nodding your head and remembering this. A bit later, it was Wendy's "Where's the Beef," which became part of a presidential campaign. The California Raisins. Nowadays, the Geico Gecko. We all know that 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. These are functioning like memes always function, but in the way in which they get tossed around and imitated and changed, they function like internet memes do now. All right, so again, there is a difference between memes in general and internet memes. And the things that I'm talking about, these commercials, they still don't function quite like internet memes do now. Because for instance, if I'm saying "Ancient Chinese secret" to a bunch of people who know this commercial, we're all in on the joke. But the memetic replication happens more in terms of pointing to the commercial. I can't, in talking to you, hand you the commercial. I can't give you the image of it. I can't play it for you. You can't hear the original words. I am, in a sense, pointing to it like a pointer in a computer program. And in your head, you are then conjuring up that commercial. But in an internet meme, you can actually take the thing itself and give the person a copy of that thing or a variation of that thing in a way that you couldn't just in common speech about commercials that were had a memetic power of their own in the pre-internet days. An internet meme. So for a user of the internet meme, you can reproduce the entire meme in the form that you received it. That is a big difference. Also, intentionality is a big difference. Dawkins proposes memes as a kind of evolution. Evolution, according to Darwinism, assumes no plan, no intent. Things happen. Internet memes are more like intelligent design, or not but they're design. There is an intent behind them. But it's like intelligent design combined with folklore, because we almost never know who came up with the original meme. So it's there is an author with intent, but we almost never know who that original that becomes part of a kind of general creative community. All right. I realize we haven't talked about any Russian internet memes yet, and I feel like this is a terrible bait and switch that I'm doing, but I did want to give you this background before going into the substance of most of these lectures, which is about internet memes and viral video. So rather than continue to do background, I want to end this lecture talking about one internet meme. And it's actually a viral video that ends up producing internet memes, because there is a distinction between viral video and memes. Viral video is a video that becomes popular, people share it. It is a meme, like anything is a meme, but the viral video then becomes fodder for creating memes because people know about it. So we're going to see a video that becomes hugely popular and then the memes that come out of it. And this video is about a man named Justice Walker, that is his name. He was from Kansas, from a family of evangelists, and they moved to Krasnoyarsk Krai when he was 11 years old, which means he speaks perfect Russian. The parents eventually moved back home, and he stayed and set up a life for himself in Russia, where he has a farm, a dairy farm. And the background, so that's who he is. And the video and the meme dates back to a particular moment in 2014 when the US imposed sanctions on Russia because of Crimea and the war in Ukraine. And this is a moment when suddenly you can't get a whole lot of imported food that people used to like, and there's all sorts of deliberate public hostility towards imported food, and there's a program of import replacements, basically saying we don't need to import all of these foodstuffs and things like that. We can produce them ourselves. It'll be better for our economy. So there is political value in having something that's about a domestic alternative to an import. And so at some point during all of this, someone in Siberia interviews Justice Walker, who is a dairy farmer and sells cheese. And so I'm going to show you a very brief clip from a video interview with him. And I have the translation. I suppose I could have done it as subtitles, but I just didn't feel like it. So the translation is just below the video. Here we go.
Мы, когда разговаривали с покупателями в городе, они говорят, ну зачем мне покупать вашу там моцареллу, когда могу итальянскую купить, и там не намного дороже, там 900 рублей, допустим, килограмм, у меня там 760 где-то выходит. Да, то есть, ну зачем? Ну сейчас, зачем? Потому что его не будет, вашего итальянского сыра.
Okay, so as you might have guessed, one of the things that really jumps out of this video is his laughter. I know when you explain something funny, it's really miserable, but it is his laughter at the end that really made him a sensation. And in fact, he ends up getting a nickname. He ends up being called the Veselый Молочник. Veselый Молочnik, the jolly dairyman, is a brand of dairy products. This is what he looks like on the dairy products. So it already exists there as something available, and it becomes the nickname for him. And so then people start coming up with all sorts of memes about Veselый Молочник, the jolly dairyman, using an image macro. So for instance, we have this one. It says, and you're not going to have any private life. Ha 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 ha. All right. And then because there won't be any of those Game of Thrones of yours. So it doesn't sound funny when I translate it, but somehow it seems to work for the consumers of these memes. And also for some reason, he ends up being kind of conflated with Mater from the Cars movies. I guess it's probably their teeth. There's an image macro available that shows you, that gives you the image and allows you to put in anything you want to make a Veselый Молочник or Justice Walker meme. So what's the big deal, right? It's funny, right? So that's one of the prerequisites for a lot of successful internet memes. But in terms of internet memes of some studying and analyzing, what I think is really valuable about this is how it really ends up crystallizing so many ambient concerns, anxieties, and desires in the political and cultural discourse of the moment. So here we have this guy who came to Russia as the child of American evangelists. Now, American Protestant evangelists have been demonized in the media, the Russian media, for well over. Their activity now is illegal, and the Russian Orthodox Church is very protective of its territory. And there's also some people being offended, saying we are a Christian country. Who are you? Whatever that means. Who are you to come in and try to give us your version of Christianity? So this is a group of people for whom officially there's not supposed to be any sympathy. However, he comes over and he stays and he becomes Russified. He speaks like a Russian. He lives a more, in a sense, a more Russian life, if you want to think of it in terms of stereotype, than most urban Russians. He's on a farm, for God's sakes. He's married another American woman, raising 100 children, homeschooling them, and he has a YouTube channel where he talks about family values and homeschooling. So he is, on the one hand, he's this alien person from this horrible phenomenon of American evangelists coming to Russia. On the other hand, he is a spokesperson for the very sort of values that are being promoted so much in Russia at this time. And then you have this guy, American, from this dairy farmer who is the spokesperson for the idea of how we can get by with import substitution, because I can just make this stuff here. What he's talking about is he's making Russian mozzarella. Now, mozzarella, of course, isn't even American initially, it is Italian. So you have the American Russian making Russian mozzarella to compete with Italian mozzarella, which you can't get anyway because of the import substitution. So you have this wonderful, strange kind of nexus of all these concerns of circulation, transnational circulation, products, sanctions, and the irony that the voice of defending Russian industry and Russian agribusiness, or however to put it, is this Russified American who came here as an evangelist. And all of this, I think, it's not the main reason why it became catchy, but it is a reason why this meme, this set of memes is worth looking at. To my mind, then, memes like this become more fodder for cultural studies, for analyzing what's going on in a place, along the lines of the way we would look at film, would look at television, would look at commercials and newspapers and so on and so forth. And of course, the meta irony of all of this is that the sanctions regime ends up being part of an anti-globalist rhetoric. We're familiar now with the idea of the evils of globalism, and who is it who is saving us from the evils of globalism? An American immigrant who lives on a farm in Russia. So that's an example of the sort of thing I think you can do with internet memes. That's all I have for now. And I'm happy to, oh wait, one more thing. I wanted to point out some resources that are available for people who are interested just in things Russian online right now. We have the Jordan Center. I have a Facebook group for people, this is not just Russian, for people who are trying to navigate teaching remotely and using technology. Obviously, I haven't navigated completely well myself. And a book club Discord where people are reading, asynchronously reading Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain as a way of thinking about plague. And I'd also like to thank Sasha for being the moderator for all of this, for Josh Tucker, director of the Jordan Center, Daniel Ilin, who was my research assistant in finding a bunch of memes, and Lev Bernstein for introducing me to the various memes for teens groups. So that is it, I believe. Oh yeah, this is how you can contact me if you have suggestions or questions or concerns or critiques. I would love to get your input. And now let's have a discussion. Sasha?
Hi, yeah, anyone who has any questions, please feel free to go right ahead, put them in the chat, or if you'd like to be unmuted and speak with us through audio, go right ahead.
Hello, thank you for the lecture, Elliot. Mine is more of a comment. I began to type it in the chat, but I'll say it instead. So your last example of Justice Walker seems to make the Rossiya channel happy for the same reason as the character Marion in the film Circus from 1936 by Grigory Alexandrov, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great connection. Though he speaks better Russian.
True.
Yeah, yeah, it works kind of perfectly that way for a different ideology, but yes, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, looks like you have one question in the chat.
Okay. Oh, from Lev Bernstein?
Yes.
I'm curious as to what you think about memes crossing over from being non-internet memes to being internet memes, like the sharing of a Geico commercial over the internet. What do I think of that? Well, I think it happens. Can you be more specific in your question? Lev, you can unmute yourself if you like. I guess I really can't. Okay, but I mean, it is actually, I guess that the general memetic ecosystem includes internet memes, but is not restricted to internet memes.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just a question about the books that you mentioned in your presentation. Are they also on Jordan Center website?
with the books that I mentioned.
The books that you quoted at the very beginning of your presentation.
Oh, no, so they're not on the website. I can happily supply you those names later. And actually, Maya is just putting, yeah.
Thank you.
And this will be uploaded, but yeah.
Thanks.
And look, oh, go ahead, Jane.
Okay, I have a question. Elliot, I wonder if you could say a little bit more about this issue of intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if everyone can hear me. So the TV ad, or even your example, your Russian meme about the farmer, someone created that intentionally. But then the retransmission or of this meme with different meanings and significance attached to it involves the intentionality of multiple others.
Mm-hmm.
But is it the case then, though, that there's an escape from control that's important to this process on the internet? An escape from control of the original meme. We see that on the internet, people are taking it over in multiple ways, and we lose any sense of intentionality on the part of the meme itself. Anyway, I wish
no, absolutely.
Hmm?
Go ahead.
So is intentionality, where does it come in, and is it essential?
Well, I think when it comes to internet memes, intentionality comes in at multiple steps. And what the phenomenon you're talking about is very real. And what it means is that the original intent gets completely supplanted by the intent of the next person who makes a new meme from it. The big obvious example in the English-speaking world is Pepe the Frog. Pepe the Frog, who was created by a cartoonist just as a sort of fun thing he did, that somehow got appropriated by the alt-right as this horrible right-wing racist meme. And so now you see most people, if they know Pepe the Frog, if they see Pepe the Frog, it's almost like seeing a swastika, which is really horrible for the person who created, who did not intend that. The problem is that that you don't have control over that. But ironically, the swastika is a non-internet meme example of the same thing, right? I mean, there are people who defend the use of the swastika saying, well, actually, it's an ancient symbol. Fine, it's an ancient symbol, but it doesn't matter that now because Hitler appropriated it, we're all going to see it as a Nazi symbol. So there's multiple moments of intentionality all along the way and that can completely overturn the original intent. And so that's the thing about memes, that's the thing about the internet, you lose control.
But there's still multiple ways that a sign could be interpreted. The swastika is a good example. We can still talk about it. And it's not, maybe if we had a vote, we would say that a majority of people see it as a Nazi symbol. But nonetheless, it seems to me that the memes still retain the possibility of multiple interpretations, not necessarily decided by a majority.
Oh, absolutely. And they evolve, right?
Yeah.
Based on people's interpretation. So, it's possible that at some point the swastika could evolve to something where the first thing people think of isn't Nazis. I think that's unlikely because of all of the obvious things. Pepe could be redeemed. That's easier than a swastika. But it takes a lot of work. It takes a change in consciousness, and it's something that's very hard to do. That's something that's very hard to do successfully intentionally. In fact, on the internet, more often than not, intent and someone's interpretation of your own privacy ends up backfiring. There's a well-known phenomenon called the Streisand effect, named after Barbara Streisand when she was upset about people posting pictures of her home on the internet. She protested about it on the internet, which means that countless people on the internet spent lots of time posting pictures of Barbara Streisand's house because she didn't want it to happen. And so that's the Streisand effect is a sort of really obvious, really stark example of what can happen to, in this case, this photograph, but any unit of information that is completely against the wishes of someone who's trying to get something to happen on the internet or not to happen on the internet.
Thanks.
So you have a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
From Shannon, do you have a personal favorite Russian internet meme?
No, not yet. I hope to by the end of all of this. I mean, when I was explaining why I'm not the right person to do this project, it's that I don't know nearly enough internet memes as I should, because I'm not soaking in them like dishwashing liquid in that commercial, to the extent that I would be if I were Russian or of a search. I'm constantly having my attention drawn to. I just like the next nice shiny object that is right in front of me, and I can't pick them among them yet.
Okay. You also have a question from Emily Wang. Do you know if the image macro format originated in the Anglophone internet or elsewhere?
I do not know. I don't know. I can try to find out, but I think I probably have this kind of reflexive imperialist American assumption that I didn't come out of the Anglophone internet, but there's no reason really to believe that.
Well, Elliot, hello. I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can. I'm not sure who's speaking, but I can hear you.
Elena Gapova.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Well, I have a question about how you collect your sample. So, well, as far as I know, there's no way to go somewhere and look through certain things, like, you know, in a book you are looking for particular words. So you are just a lot of time on the internet, a lot of time, and things just pop up.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So,
and are you subscribed to Facebook, to Telegram? So where are you electronically?
Electronically, Facebook, Kontakte. I have things from Telegram sent to me. I should be on Telegram. It's one more social media platform that I should be on that I'm not.
Right.
I rely in particular on native informants. And this is the funny thing is, from a scientific point of view, my sample is completely unscientific. On the other hand, I think
absolutely, yeah.
But this is one of the few areas in which, like, seeing what comes up first in a Google search or a Yandex search actually is kind of a valid approach, because we're talking about popularity and getting things in front of people's eyes. So, but I never make any pretense to having a scientific method. I have never been anywhere near a scientific method.
Well, probably no one does. No one does. Yeah. But I know that the Library of Congress, well, I don't know if the Library of Congress works with Russian content in this regard, but they work with English content, and they developed some ways of saving and collecting what is going on the internet. They have a whole department working on this.
Right. No, that's great. I don't know if there's a scientific equivalent or in the Russian internet. I mean, what I find very valuable places like the Lurkmore sites, right, which is the kind of cynical parodic Wikipedia, which really exists to a large extent to talk about memes. It's Absurdopedia. There are lots of places. There's even Know Your Meme, the English language site Know Your Meme, has a lot of stuff on Russian memes. So there are lots of sites out there for people who want to know more about memes, including about Russian memes. So I go to those, or I will be going to those. I haven't done nearly enough of this research to justify my talking about it as I really should have by now.
Okay, thank you.
So you have a question from Maria. How does the term memetic relate to mimetic, if at all? With the E.
With an I or an E, yes.
Yes.
Excellent question. They're similar, but mimetic, as in metic desire, the sad thing, of course, is they're pronounced basically the same. They both have to do with imitation, but they're really talking about different things. So when I think in terms of, say, Girard's mimetic desire, it's really about, wanting what someone else wants, setting up an example of what you should want, which in a way is sort of like what advertising does, which can get you more towards memetics. But really, I think it's more of a coincidence of roots rather than anything else, because memetic which is related to memes, is really about these units of information and not about, say, what Girard talks about, for instance, with memetics, or we're just being faithful, or an artistic approach trying to be faithful to the original. I think they're functioning in different worlds.
Great. Tanya has a question. Says, thank you, Elliot. I loved your example about how viral videos prompt memes. Have you noticed the contrary process taking place? I was thinking about the meanwhile in Russia, meme in connection to the recent video of Russia being able to avoid COVID. For those who have seen that video.
So that's an excellent question. To step back a minute, the reason that I'm calling the book Meanwhile in Russia is because of this website. There's Meanwhile in lots of countries around the world, but Meanwhile in Russia, I think, is the biggest one, and for reasons that I think will become clear. Meanwhile in Russia is a set of memes showing ridiculous things happening in Russia. You know, people get jumping on top of cars and banging on the windshields, and cows falling out of trucks, and, you know, meteors hitting Chelyabinsk. All this stuff that is really funny, but also plays into stereotypes about what Russians are, and yet they're produced by Russians who are putting them on the internet, because it's not like we're sending people out there from CIA spies to try to go out to Russia and find examples of people behaving weirdly. A lot of it is facilitated by the very early dash cams, the cars that people the cameras that people have in their cars. So there's all of this raw video out there that can catch these moments. But what you have with the Meanwhile in Russia set of memes is this entire phenomenon that very much otherizes Russia and makes Russia this source of weirdness that is both appealing, that it can, as so many of these things can be both flattering and offensive to that is being described. Like, we are like, how dare you? Here's our wonderful weirdness, right? So in terms of memetic content or awareness of weird Russian stuff on the internet, I think it comes more from viral video than from still images, in part because those images usually have Russian text with them. The stereotypes that come from these viral videos then can feed into memes, then feed back into new videos. So Tanya, your example of why of how you talk about that rap video, right? About how Russians survive COVID, which actually sounds a little bit like the leader of Brazil talking about how Brazilians are so resilient that they won't get COVID. This video is ironically talking about Russian resistance and Russians are so tough for this, based on a whole compilation of stereotypes from earlier viral video, and then from all of these memes that circulate about weird, wacky Russianness. So yeah, there's a feedback loop that's there, absolutely, and it's a good point.
And you have a question from Maya.
Hi, Maya.
What do you think is the relationship between the irony inherent in meme creation / proliferation and the sincerity with which memes are often used to make political points? Another way of asking this, where does the irony go?
Wow, I mean, that to me is a big question about the internet in general, right? Because, and in particular it's related to the questions that we're always asking about trolling, right? That, you know, you start out as an ironic Nazi and you end up just as a Nazi. At some point, for some people, the irony does seem to fade away and you just get very sincere about it. I've been reading a lot about this because it's a big concern when it comes to radicalization, and I haven't seen any good answers. Now, in terms of how the memes are proliferated to make points, you know, I'm not really sure, because this is the weakness in general of my approach to culture production and everything that I do, which is it's not anthropological, not sociological, and I'm not asking people what. I'm just see. So I'm not in a good position to know how people go from sharing things ironically to sharing things to mean something. One of the things, I think this can be related to one of the things that happens so successfully in Russia under, almost less Putin than under Surkov, in which irony can be hijacked by the regime instead of against the regime, kind of official sympathy, so that you can be in on the joke, but still be you know, quote unquote patriotic. That you can share these memes aggressively. They can be funny, but you can kind of mean it. I mean, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about, that I talk about in Russia's Alien Nations, and I'm also going to be talking about in Russia, is the Vatnik meme, which is this developed as this very, very anti right-wing Putinist, well, right-wing is the right phrase, anti-nationalist Putinist patriot stereotype of a drunken, aggressive Russian that is really very hard to appropriate seriously as this is what I want to be. And yet Vatnik is still available for them. People say, yeah, I'm a Vatnik, whatever, go ahead, call me that, it's okay. Because I think sometimes it's less about irony and sincerity than it is more about the phenomenon of reclaiming the negative. Kind of like, kind of like the way that queer is reclaimed, right? You know, you're going to abuse me with it, fine, get on, and I'm going to do my own thing. That is, I think, one of the biggest, one of the most interesting ways that we consume and react to culture, and it's also one of the ways we create culture. Cultural products have no control over how they actually end up being deployed by others.
And those are all of our questions from the chat. If anyone
Great.
else has any, please feel free.
Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you all for being here. It's so nice to see so many
Enjoyed it.
faces. And
Yeah,
so we'll
thank
be
you very
doing
much.
this again. Yeah, we'll be doing this next Friday. It'll have much more Russian content. It'll still be a little bit of background stuff. Yeah, we should all be seeing each other in some way or another because these are such miserable times. Let's have some fun with something.